by the name of Bert. And Bert the turtle was very alert. When danger threatened him, he never got hurt. He knew just what to do. He ducked and covered, ducked and covered.
He did what we all must learn to do. You
and you
and you
and you, duck and cover.
HBR Talk with Hannah Wallen. About 6 years ago, there was a big push by feminists to get various governments to print standard currency with the faces of famous women from history on it instead of the men who are already featured. There was no reason for this push other than simple territory marking, but it was presented as a serious women's issue with the admonition that non-supportives of the initiative must be sexist. The promoters got more response to that attitude than to the idea itself. On Twitter, where Carol and Credo Perez decided to campaign for that change, debate became a little heated. She got a lot of arguments. One guy made a couple of rather juvenile, sexually aggressive comments. Credo Perez did not use Twitter's block and mute features to shut her detractor out. Instead, she attempted to complain to Twitter about his tweets, which she considered threatening, without using Twitter's reporting system. In fact, she tried multiple ways that didn't involve using the system Twitter had put in place for that purpose. When Twitter responded by asking her to use the existing system, fill out a form, Credo Perez whined in a blog post that doing so wasn't practical, and therefore Twitter was on the side of the abusers. She started a petition demanding that Twitter add a report button to individual profile pages in every single tweet, along with a double standard allowing abusive speech when used by women in response to tweets they found offensive. She went to the media with her complaint, claiming to have received 50 threats per hour. Only 2 were ever found and published, or rather, quoted, both from that same guy, but the media did dutifully publish her 50 threats per hour allegation. That allegation was used to pressure Twitter into creating the now standard reporting system that ultimately led to a much broader spectrum of censorship than Credo Perez claimed to want. Her petition indicates that her goal was to persuade Twitter's administrators to make heckling another person over a disagreement a violation of the site's terms of service, but only when the target was female. When women do it, she wanted it to be considered self-defense. Since then, the list of offenses that are considered abuse has been expanded to include language that isn't politically correct, generalizations about the various demographic groups within the progressive stack, and merely being disrespectful or offensive. Twitter has even openly admitted to political censorship. Once the report button was granted, the movement to get women's images printed on standard currency faded out of the public discourse, with most of its stated goals unachieved. I'm guessing they only cared about one. During the Gamergate controversy, Twitter's evolving reporting system was used extensively against Gamergate supporters. Some on the social justice side of the conflict even demanded that the FBI investigate alleged bullying harassment they claimed was committed by Gamergate supporters. The report concluded that some of the most serious allegations were a result of hoaxes played by trolls, one prime example of which was heavily laden with classic memes like the sender telling the recipient, "You done goofed." The investigation was closed due to a lack of actionable threats. The feminist-led media pressure group, Women, Action, and the Media, published a report from their own investigation into harassment during the controversy in which they noted that out of the 10,000 accounts on the GG Autoblocker blacklist used to, quote, identify Gamergate supporters, only 65 accounts were flagged as harassing. Out of the entire discussion under the Gamergate hashtag, 512 accounts were accused of harassment, only 12% of which could be linked to Gamergate. Who were the other 88%? Regardless, the FBI and a feminist media pressure group both investigated alleged Gamergate supporter harassment of women on Twitter and found that the allegation was not supported by the evidence. That should end the narrative, right? Of course not. Multiple outlets criticized the FBI report as a failure because it did not find what didn't exist. The Women, Action, and the Media report was all but ignored. Instead, critics lamented that nothing was being done about the harassment the FBI didn't find. And guess those trained investigators are all just incompetent, yeah? The media has yet to deviate from the narrative that Gamergate was about harassing women, no matter who they have to denigrate to support it. This comes as no surprise to anti-feminist and men's rights activists. We're quite familiar with these narratives and this behavior. It's a kind of aggression I've had to explain to outsiders this way. Imagine you're a kid who has brought a ball from home to your neighborhood park. There, you and your friends are playing a game. Another kid approaches and demands the use of your ball. When you refuse to surrender it, the interloper demands to be added to your game with your friends. You allow her to join in, but then she also demands that you change the rules of your game to suit her. And as she names the changes she wants, it becomes obvious that she's just orchestrating a more roundabout way to make you give her the ball. You tell her the rules are set, but she's welcome to bring her own ball and start her own game. It's a free park, and anyone can play here. She responds by taking a swing at your face. You dodge her fist, and since it didn't land, you don't fight back, but you do laugh a little at her overreaction and tell her to cut it out. In response, your attacker begins loudly complaining that you have excluded her from ball games at this park because she's a girl, that you're mean and rude, that you hurt her feelings, and that she feels threatened. She labels you a bully and demands park workers eject you from the park. Do you accept the label and leave? Argue politics on social media from a men's rights, anti-feminist, or even just a non-feminist perspective, and you'll encounter the allegation that these groups engage in widespread targeted harassment and bullying of women on social media just because of their sex. Don't try asking one of these accusers for evidence. I've received responses ranging from "everybody knows it's true" to potentially fake screenshots of no-follower, no-history accounts that have already been suspended. I was even once told that asking for evidence is bullying because I was refusing to believe the victim. Other times I've been given evidence that is just an example of a person contradicting a feminist who joined in on a social media argument and then demanded that nobody with a viewpoint she disagrees with reply to her. Turns out feminists think it's bullying if you object to being lectured. They think you're a bully if you object to being falsely accused of harboring malicious intent. They think disagreeing with their political talking points is bullying, and contradicting them or criticizing their arguments is harassment, even if they tracked you down just to have that argument. I experienced a recent example of this from a Twitter account that goes by the name of Tekla. The account purports to be that of a woman, but its behavior indicates that it's actually one of the many alternate accounts run by a user our listeners will know as God Evolves, who has publicly admitted to targeting MRAs with aggressive behavior in an effort to get us to respond by saying something that would lead to our social media accounts getting banned. You know, the guy who was triggered by bread. Tekla and one of his alt accounts latched onto a tweet of mine that wasn't about them, didn't mention them, and wasn't tweeted to a hashtag, meaning for non-users of Twitter, a tweet they had no likelihood of seeing unless they were watching my account. Initially, they were just petty and rude, but then other people began commenting in the thread, and eventually Tekla replied to another user's criticism of sex-specific anti-rape posters by claiming they were a response to the crime rate and linking to an article about the rate of rape allegations in India. It had nothing to do with the original topic of the thread, but you know, rape is feminists' favorite subject. I responded with an infographic based on an article published in The Hindu that broke down the results of rape allegations made over a 6-month period in Delhi, finding that the rate of false allegations there was at least 65% and could be as high as 85%, mostly because of India's arranged marriage and honor cultures. For pointing out the inherent bigotry of demonizing men from India as predatory and violent based on a prevalence of allegations that have a 65% to 85% false rate, I was accused by Tekla of harassing her and told she was reporting every comment I'd made for harassment. Why? Because I'd contradicted her male demonizing narrative, and that's bad. You're not allowed to do that, guys. It's very rude. And it's certainly not bullying or harassment for the user behind these accounts to publicly announce that he's pursuing my account with aggressive attempts at baiting me into aggressive responses he could report as abuse. It's not bullying or harassment that he spammed my account with disingenuous questions that are obviously intended to further that effort. It's not bullying or harassment that he accused me of drug use and specifically targeted my physical appearance, my sexuality, my gender identity, my relationship status, and my friends in order to try to achieve that goal. Granted, all but the last of those had no effect on me, and the last just eliminated my hesitancy to report his accounts, but he did try, and he didn't consider his account the least bit endangered as a result. It's only harassment if I reply to any of those comments by criticizing his behavior too vehemently. That's how it works, you see. No amount of rudeness, boundary issues, denigration, or spamming is to be considered inappropriate when feminists do it. Just as those who supported the creation of Twitter's report button in the first place said about women. Commenting on the merits of their arguments, however, or their other behavior, now that's just mean. Accountability is bullying now. And abusing a system of restrictions on public speech as a weapon against the free association of one's political opponents? Totally not abuse. And these people think they're not clowns. Tune in to HBR Talk as we hand the bully label back to the cry-bully feminists who use it as a tool of political censorship. The discussion streams on multiple platforms. You can catch us Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern via the link in the low bar, or find other viewing and listening options for that time or later on badgerfeed.com.